And I'm today, this is my presentation on Clock Tower, specifically Clock Tower and bringing stalker horror to video games. All right. So, to start with, picture this. It is the mid 90s, and you and your ragtag team of aspiring, fresh faced video game developers have just won um, an in house competition to determine the next game that you and the people at your company will work on. Um, and you're a little bit intimidated just because, like, it is the first time that you're even kind of like suggesting a pitch like this. And generally, you guys have worked on sports games only, but you want to work on something a little bit more experimental. Specifically, you want to make a horror game, and not just any kind of horror game, the kind inspired by um, specifically the Italian horror of the 80s, the kind that often was violent but still quite colorful at the same time. Um, little did he know it, but this is what Hifumi Kono would do, and he would make Clock Tower. And little did he know, but his little project would have ripple effects that would echo throughout video game history. But yeah, one of the main sources of inspiration was the aforementioned 80s horror movies, specifically Italian horror. And in this case, yeah, with Phenomena, one of Dario Argento's films, was a source of inspo here. But yeah, within this game, we are playing as a very vulnerable type of character in that this character is only a teenager and orphaned, and she cannot defend herself through traditional means. She has to rely on her wits to get about her, and yeah, just her own situational awareness, which is in turn the players as well. And this is actually a factor that Hifumi Kono was somewhat at odds with both like his higher ups and some members of his team, just given that generally with more horror based experiences, the player could generally still kind of defend themselves. But in Clock Tower, you can only really defend yourself in like very specific circumstances, and mostly you'd have to pretty much run or hide to avoid danger. And this is one of the dangers you are avoiding in the game. So this is the Scissor Man, and essentially he is the most constant threat that you are facing, like just within the mansion itself. uh he will periodically show up to stall your progress and get in the way, more or less. So you'll need to learn to avoid him, and the game signals his presence specifically by his theme song, a very sinister track that would feel pretty much right at home in like any slasher of the era. And yeah, so he needs to be avoided. Um, and obviously, while his design isn't very scary looking, uh, his characterization is still just very strong as just this man child who seems to consider violence as fun. And so in that case, you're very aware of the danger this character presents just every time he is around. So yeah, this is one of the many few encounters that the player can have with this total menace. Clock Tower similarly built its foundation on point and click adventure games, which, while they could have elements of horror, um it completely embraced the mechanics of adventure games to make like a more complete horror experience. For instance, this had an early example of what's now known as a quick time event mechanic, where you would be asked to mash a button in order to get out of the way of like just dangerous situations whenever you face them head on. But not only that, much like a typical point and click adventure game, you would also need to use items found within the mansion to solve puzzles and move the story forward. In the 90s, or specifically 1995, this is the closest experience you could get to experiencing a Giallo film as a choose your own adventure story. If you could experience a game as an adventure, what do you think you would be in? But yeah, it's just a shame that this never got an official port in the West until about 2024 without the reach of fan translations. In closing, I'd say the game still holds up today. And even then, it was really ahead of its time in that it had a disempowered antagonist, a persistent stalker antagonist, and it embraced the adventure game formula to make something really special. But in closing, I still think it's a really special experience and worth your time, even 30 years later. But thank you for watching my presentation, and yeah, thanks for just taking time out of your day.
Thank you for the information.